all gather here. I'm Simran Pawar and I'm currently pursuing MMS from Pillai Institute of Management Studies and Research. It is my pleasure to host this webinar today, which is organized by the Social Service Committee of PIMSA in collaboration with Seroptimus International Bombay Chamber. It is my privilege to welcome our esteemed speaker, Mr. Pashupathy Gopalan, CEO of Sunedison and Vilasini Housing, and Dr. Pranjal Kumar Phukan, thought leader and industry expert. I extend a hearty welcome to Dr. R. Chandran, Director of PIMSA, Ms. Namrata Saxena, President of SIBC, and Dr. Anjali Bhute, Chairperson of PIMSA Social Service Committee. A warm welcome to all the Seroptimus members who have joined us today. I welcome our dear faculty members of PIMSA and my fellow colleagues for this webinar on World Environment Day. The theme for World Environment Day this year is Only One Earth. The objective of this webinar is to raise awareness about the dangers that growing pollution levels and climate change pose to the ecosystem. The speakers will throw light on some measures that each one of us can take to mitigate these threats. So without any further delay, I request Dr. Selina Joy, Professor at PIMSA, an active member of Seroptimus International Bombay Chamber, to introduce today's first speaker, Mr. Gopalan. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today on this Sunday morning. World Environment Day has fallen on a day which is a day of rest, where we can really take some time out to think about this concept, One Earth. I'm happy to introduce our first speaker for the day, Mr. Pashupathy Gopalan. Mr. Gopalan is a thought leader and a visionary in energy and sustainability. He's currently focused on building out a portfolio of companies in the distributed energy and affordable housing to positively impact the environment and lives of the marginalized. He is a co-chairman and CEO of Sunedison. He's also the co-founder and CEO of Vilasini Housing, an innovation platform to transform low-cost housing development for blue-collar workers. He's also an advisor on OMIUM, which is focused on green hydrogen production using PEM technology in India. Previously, Mr. Gopalan was the president and CEO of Sunedison for Asia, Africa, and Australia, where he built Sunedison's renewable energy business, including 1 gigawatt of renewable energy power plants in India, Thailand, Malaysia, South Africa, China, and Japan. Under his leadership, Sunedison was named India's best solar power producer by IPPAI and Deloitte, and was recognized globally for the groundbreaking Gujarat Narmada Canal Top solar project in 2012. Sunedison was also named as India's most innovative developer for 2014. Mr. Gopalan was also named the Solar Power Person of the Year for 2015 in India. He led Lighthouse BP and Everstone's bid to win the process for Green Growth Equity Fund, now called Eversource, run by National Infrastructure and Investment Fund of India and Department for International Development of UK government in 2017. Mr. Gopalan led Cyprus's efforts in image sensors, memory devices in mobile handset markets, and held roles leading strategy, marketing, mergers and acquisitions, VC investments, and various business units. In Bloom Energy, based out of NASA, Moffett Field, he shaped the strategy and led sales and marketing. Mr. Gopalan, with such an impressive portfolio, we are really so grateful for you to join us today and to really take the time out to speak to our students. Mr. Gopalan today will speak on the topic, Igniting Young Minds with Solar Energy. Thank you once again. Over to you, Mr. Gopalan.
Thank you very much, madam, and really very generous introduction. I think you've been over generous. It's a great honor to be here, and really appreciate that so many people have come on a Sunday morning. And so I'll be brief in my points I want to make. Would love to, if the program allows, happy to answer questions. And we can talk about climate change or solar, which is close to my heart. So we can, Amrita, I'll just say next, and maybe you can go to the next slides. The first, you can go to the next slide, Amrita. So the first point is for us to understand if you can be on the first slide, I'll let you know, Amita, when you need to go to next. If you can, yeah, just stay on the first slide. I'll let you know next whenever you have to move. So I think it's next, please. So I think what is important is for us to understand. When I started working in green energy, which was about 16, 17 years back, there was a lot of debate about is climate change for real? Maybe this is really something that the Western world is coming up to suppress the developing countries from developing and not utilizing the fossil resources that they need to grow and all of that. But I think honestly, every passing year, this dialogue has intensified even more, even between Paris in COP21, where I was present with our honorable Prime Minister, and recently in Glasgow. I think I can say that at least my view is that it's beyond doubt. This is probably the biggest threat facing humanity. Obviously, I think some people believe that this can result in the sixth extinction of humanity altogether, but I'm not an expert in that. But what I can tell you is it is probably the biggest threat now that COVID seems to be somewhat more under control. I think COVID has also resulted in people stepping back and thinking about climate change a lot more seriously. We do see that the investments in green hydrogen to save the planet, to decarbonize the planet, has dramatically increased in the last 2 years, 3 years, to trillions of dollars. So, obviously, I think as participants in the society, as young minds, you hear about forest fires. I was in Maharashtra, in Pune, I think last weekend, where one of eminent speakers was talking about so much forest fires in Maharashtra. We hear about drought, there is cyclones, there is typhoons. Clearly, this is for real. So I think the first step is for us to believe in it. Each one of us has to go through our own journey, do the needful to understand that this is quite serious and we have to save the planet. Next. So what is climate change? Oftentimes it's being referred to an increase in the surface temperature of the earth compared to what it was in, let's say, pre-industrial era, around 1850s. So in the last 150, 200 years, the surface temperature of Earth has gone up by 1.1 degrees Celsius. About 10 years back, people used to feel that 2 degrees Celsius is the maximum that we will be able to afford. And after that, there can be catastrophic consequences. But honestly, now it just seems to be advanced to even 1.5 degrees Celsius. So essentially, you have to think about it that we have used up 70% of our budget to allow for temperature increase. And what happens is, obviously, with this temperature increase, the climate systems are completely disturbed. The evaporation of water from the ocean is at a different rate. The ice caps are melting, increasing the water level. So all of this is resulting in change that we are observing in our planet. Next, the other bit to keep in mind is, I think slowly people have started saying that even at a 1.5 degrees Celsius increase, there may be certain catastrophic events that we cannot predict. They may be low probability event. People people are sometimes they think low probability event is not important for us to consider. Something may be a 5% probability event, but if it wipes out the earth and it results in the sixth extinction of humanity, it's something that you want to avoid. So people sometimes don't understand that this is really serious, and a low probability event is also something that we have to worry about. As I mentioned, because of the solar caps melting, the ocean levels have increased, close to 8-10 inches. You can imagine low-lying islands in the world will disappear. There will be countries that will disappear because of water level increase in the ocean. Next. Clearly, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think the ice caps are melting and this is becoming a serious issue. Next. Obviously, many species of animals are not able to survive all of these extreme conditions, call it fires or drought or flooding. All of this is resulting in our complete biodiversity being affected, natural habitat being completely affected, and species, animals getting wiped out. Maybe obviously there are death and significant loss of property and life of people as well. That so we're this is obviously seriously affecting who we are. Next. So one of the things for us to remember is why is this happening? Clearly, I'm sure all of you have heard of greenhouse gases and carbon dioxide. See, it's not like carbon dioxide is bad for the earth. There is certain percentage of carbon dioxide which has kept our earth warm for us to survive and enjoy life in our planet, right? Otherwise, if carbon dioxide was not there, then earth might be a very cold place and we might just be living in ice ages. But obviously, as the percentage of carbon dioxide has increased, approximately 0.04% in the last 150 years, the carbon dioxide is trapping the heat that comes from the sun and not letting it go back, because there is always some amount of heat that's coming from the sunlight. Some part of it gets reflected back and goes back into the space. But if it's not allowed to escape the Earth's atmosphere, it gets trapped, and it's resulting in warming of our planet, which is resulting in the temperature increase, which is resulting in the ice caps melting and the levels of ocean water increasing. So it's very important for us to contain these sources of carbon. And where does that come from? Primarily the way we live our life, right? Most of the electricity that we use comes from coal in India, and all the vehicles we drive, they use diesel or petrol, which then emit carbon dioxide. Industries emit carbon dioxide because coal is used for boilers and running water. So the question is, 10 years back, 20 years back, there were no technologies which can economically displace sources of carbon. But today that is not true. Today, we can change it. We can change the world. We can decarbonize. We can use cleaner and greener energy. The only thing that comes in the way is your own mind, your own resolve, your own willingness to learn, adopt, and change, right? I think change doesn't come so easily to people. And so that's what is required. I think as young minds, you can influence your families, your uncles, your aunts, your parents to switch to cleaner forms of energy and not use sources of energy that comes from carbon. India is, I think many different people have done the study that India will be amongst the worst affected countries from climate change. And every passing year, this is becoming apparent. And poorer people get affected by this even more. So just something to keep in mind, that I think India is, life in India is at stake, and India cannot take too long to decarbonize its economy. Next. Now, the question is obviously, what are the choices you have? One is to obviously worry and say, we're in for a doom, but that's not true. As I said earlier, the only thing that comes in the way is your own mind, your willingness, your resolve to save the planet, switch to greener and cleaner forms of energy, so that each one of you, if you played your role, then society will change. Governments can lag, policy can lag, but if the people in the country change, then automatically our society changes, and we can contribute to saving the planet. And India, I don't know if you all know, but India is the third largest contributor to greenhouse gases currently. Today, when you wake up, you should know that today, in the next 24 hours, Indians would have contributed third worst amount of greenhouse gases to the world. So we have to resolve, we have to change. Each one of you can change without spending excess money, without spending money. You have an opportunity to save money by switching to green energy, not spend money. So it's not like we're asking for you to, use your wallet and lose money. You can save money, you can make money by switching to green energy. Next. 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 So the point, I started working in alternate energy about 16, 17 years back, and I've seen the evolution of the solar industry over the last 13, 14 years. And solar has become the cheapest form of electricity produced in India. I'll repeat it. Solar is the cheapest form of electricity produced in India. Obviously, it cannot give you 100% of your energy needs because sun only shines during the daytime, and you can generate solar energy primarily when there is sunlight. Of course, you can store it. You can store it in battery systems, but that combination does not make it the cheapest. So we don't recommend people generate solar and store it in batteries and then run their homes 100%. That may be good for people that want to save the planet and can spend a little bit more. But those people that want to balance both saving the planet and not want to spend more, unless you have a power cut problem where storage can really be very helpful, you should switch to solar and it'll be the cheapest form of electricity. Next. Now, how does solar work? It's quite simple. Basically, light is falling on a silicon panel made out of silicon. Silicon is one of the most abundant elements on the face of the earth. Sand, the beach sand that you see is silicon dioxide. So if you remove the oxygen, you're left with silicon. And that silicon material is the typical blue color that you see on the solar panels. Although the blue color comes from silicon nitride, which is Si3N4, but the material in which the solar action is happening, where sunlight falls and positive and negative charges are created. So a solar panel, think of it like a battery. It has a positive terminal, negative terminal, and if you stack them up, suddenly you have a source of power, source of energy. Of course, unlike a battery that has stored chemical energy, here the energy is available to you only when there is sunshine. So that's how solar works. It's very simple to understand. The technology is more than 60, 70 years old, and the physics is a few hundred years old. The fact that with this photovoltaic effect is not new to mankind, and has been engineered and used for more than 6 decades. Next. I think as you think about using solar or recommending to your families, what you have to remember is it's very easy. Next, just stay here, please. The solar system is very simple. As I showed you, there is a panel, and then there is an inverter, because the current, the energy utilized in a home is AC electricity, alternating current. So you have to convert from the DC, which is like a battery that the solar panels produce, and convert it. So the inverter is basically that. Structure is nothing but you simply holding the solar panels in your roof, maybe your terrace, right? So to hold it in place, you need structure, and cables and wiring is very simple, and battery pack if you want to store it. So the system itself is very simple, but there are probably many, many different ways people cut corners and deliver poor quality, in which case neither did you save the planet, nor would you save any money, but you will lose the money that you invested. So one caution we do have is don't have this typical mindset that you will buy the cheapest system. You will get what you pay for, and the systems will not work. They will not generate the energy that you want to generate from solar. So this is not an area where you want to be penny wise and pound foolish. You have to do your research and make sure that you're getting good quality products, because there are hundreds of ways one can cut corners and deliver you a poor quality product, which is cheapest. It won't work after a few years. While if you did a good job, this system should work for 30, 40 years without a problem. The life of your building, you can set up solar in your terrace, use the entire terrace space. If you want to utilize the terrace, you can use a high raised structure, and the structure can be at a 8 feet, 9 feet height so that you can walk around and still use your terrace. You can use it as a lounge or whatever. All right, next. I'll just mention briefly. There is no financial investment in India today which is better than solar. For those of you that are studying management education, I can tell you the returns with solar are obscenely high. And most importantly, this return is over the next 25 years. I don't think Reserve Bank of India can give you a 25-year instrument. So there is no financial instrument that can give you this level of return for this long a tenor, which is 25, 30 years, right? And as I mentioned, these systems can easily work for 30, 40 years. So that's all I mean. I'll just say that this is probably the most lucrative investment one can make. But also remember the caution I had, which is if you don't install good quality systems, you can be rest assured your system will not generate what you thought or what you estimated. And instead of making a return, you will lose your money. Next. Listen, I think for what we are noticing is as the society is evolving, sometimes solar panels sitting on a rooftop doesn't look very nice. You may want to make it look like a lounge in your terrace. So we have developed designs which are aesthetic, and these are starting to appear. Some of you may have seen Elon Musk showcase the solar tiles and solar roof. So what we've done is very similar to that. Next. So we were the first company. The purpose is not to talk about Sunedison, which is our company today. It was more to, ensure that you can understand solar and see how simple it is and how you can make a contribution to the society and saving the planet. What you also have to remember is a carbon dioxide which is not emitted into the environment in Chembur is the same in London. Doesn't matter. As far as the atmosphere is concerned, it doesn't care whether the carbon dioxide came from Chembur or London or New York. You are still making a contribution. A carbon dioxide molecule not emitted is as valuable from anywhere in the world. So do your part. Make sure that you can save the planet. Just very briefly about Sunedison, we were the company that commercialized silicon for the first time in the world in 1958-59. We've been a solar energy company for more than 23, 24 years. In India, we've been present and we've been a pioneering company in India. We built the Narmada Canal project for Mr. Narendra Singh, Mr. Modi, where he, I think, very fondly showcased it to the entire world. We also built India's first utility scale plant. We also built India's first rooftop PPA plant. We built the first microgrid in India. We did the first airport in the world that was completely covered by solar. And we've done a lot of irrigation pumps. We have more than 30,000 installations of small solar systems. And we try our best to ensure that the systems we deliver, we install, they will last for 30, 40 years. For us, that's very important because otherwise people will lose their belief in this whole system of green energy. And we want to make sure that this asset class can transform the planet and can ensure that we can save our planet. Next. Look, I think we've done work in India for nearly 13, 14 years, and we've worked with many, many companies and agencies in India. This is just a very small sample set of that. I'll stop here. If the organizers think I should take questions, I'm happy to do that, but I'll take your cue. So just remember, just in summary, do not wait. Please leave this meeting today. Do your bit. If you have a home or your uncle has a home or your aunt has a home, your friends have a home, try and convert their terraces to solar. We'll be very happy to help. We're present in about 25 cities in India, and we will ensure that we deliver a quality system that lasts for 35, 40 years.
Thank you so much, sir. That was a really wonderful presentation. So before we move to the next speaker, I would like to ask one question to you, like what triggered your interest in solar energy?
Honestly, I started working in NASA in 2004 in alternate energy. And it's really that work that educated me about climate change and how important it is to do this work and transition and essentially save the planet. But we've come a long way in making it economically viable. Earlier, that was not the case. So, being a business person, I'm very focused on trying to make something economically viable, and that's what we've done.
Okay, there's one more, Simran, just a moment. There's one question on the chat box, Mr. Gopalan. Zareen Babu, who's an active
Right.
Seroptimist from Seroptimist International, Bangalore. She's asking, is the power generated by full sunlight more than when the sky is partly cloudy, because the solar panel still works in cloudy situations?
Yeah, absolutely. So a very good point. I think the sunlight carries the photons that hit on the panel. If you put your hand and you block the sunlight, the generation will be less. You don't 100% block it because there will always be reflected light which can fall on. But if you take a black sheet of paper and paste it on the solar panel, and it's a thick enough black sheet of paper, then almost the generation will go to zero. That's why in the nighttime there is no sunlight and there is no generation, right? Even though there is moonlight is not strong enough.
Yes.
So I think
Yeah.
good thought. Which is why what happens is dust is a problem in India. Is such a dusty environment. So when dust particle sits on top of your solar panel, which can happen very easily, right? In India, even if you leave your drawing room door open for a few hours, there is dust on the floor. So just imagine the terrace. So you have to clean the dust very regularly. I would say every second, third day, or have automated systems to clean it. Without that, you're losing energy production.
Okay.
I think there's one more.
Thank you for that.
I think there's one more.
Yeah.
One more question. I don't know if you want me to take it.
Yeah. So one more question. No, Anjali Bhutia, chairperson, says that some real eye openers and interesting facts that we were completely unaware of. You brought to think. I want to ask another question. Is that we all hear about solar energy being the greatest. So what are some of the challenges, and why do people hesitate to go all out and invest in solar energy?
I was with our MNRE minister last night. He was telling me that the life insurance penetration in his district is 4%, and people know that this is the right thing to do. I think human beings don't find it so easy to change so quickly. So honestly, it's just a process of learning and adopting and changing, and events like this which make people aware. And hopefully, in this crowd, each one of you goes and changes, and you change 10 other people. So I think it's just the process of change in mankind's. There is no challenge. The only challenge I'll request you to keep in mind is really do diligence to ensure that you do work with very, very good solar system provider who cares about ensuring that the quality is really perfect. You can't compromise on the quality, because the system will not work then. It will not work. So, and honestly, there are only a few providers that do that. There may be thousands of companies that install in solar, but I would say I can count in one hand the number of people that really strive hard to deliver a good system. And when you do, it has to work for 35, 40 years very easily.
Sir, I have one question, sir.
Yes, Mani, sir.
Yeah. May I ask them directly, madam?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Sir, your speech has been simply superb. Many of the items, many of the points which were not known to me, rather to our audience, you have given excellent clarification. But I have one or two questions with regard to this solar panel and solar energy. So as you say that the solar panel will have to be fitted on the top of the terrace. So what are the safety measures? Number one. Number two, what is the environment or the heat which is generated for the building below that? Will it affect the health of the person?
Sir, the work is quite dangerous when some people go to the terrace and install. So we are very careful. We don't install systems that go all the way to the edge of the terrace. We leave a 1 meter spacing in the perimeter, which many people don't do, because many people are trying to sell the maximum and make the most money. They will set up solar systems which go all the way to the edge. So, and second is we use safety lines. When our workers get on the top of the roof and do this work, they usually have, all of them have safety harnesses, which obviously cost money, and many companies will not provide that for their employees. So it's no different than doing work in the top of your terrace using international safety standards, which are very clearly specified. But it does cost a little bit more money. You don't want somebody coming and installing solar on your rooftop that falls to his death. It has happened in India. Unfortunately, it's only because we have this mindset of buying the cheapest, right? The second question, sir, is there is no generation of heat. The heat is coming from sunlight. If anything, solar should reduce the heat that goes into your building, because it's absorbing approximately 15-20% of the heat coming from sunlight and converting it into electricity. Technically, your building should be cooler because of that. So there is no heat generation, but there is use of heat and conversion of heat energy into electrical, which then reduces the amount of heat that goes into your building. I hope that's clear. Just based on simple conservation of energy.
Sir, excuse me, sir. One more question.
Sir, okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
one more
last,
question.
sir.
That
Yes,
is an
sir.
addition to the question I already asked you. That in case you are able to hear me, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So in case of any hard substance falling on that, you said that, actually the particular structure which can continue for 30-40 years, that is good. But what is the strength of that? Whether it is a hardened material, whether it is a soft material, whether it is brittle, whether it can break, whether any additions are required to be done, or replacement cost. Can you just explain this, sir?
So the panels have a glass surface on the top. It is a 3.2 millimeter tempered glass. If you know, some people use in offices and in their homes, typically 12 millimeter or 10 millimeter tempered glass. This is as strong as that glass, but obviously with a smaller thickness. So if you take a stone, a small stone, nothing should happen. But if you take a rock and throw on your panels, panels will break. And then you have to replace the panels because the glass would have broken. So just be as careful as you would be with your glass door and not throw stones on it.
Okay, thank you, Mani sir, for that question, and thank you, Mr. Gopalan. We have to move on. It's a Sunday morning. We'd have loved to, continue and chat with you, and but we have another speaker, and then we have to. So, Simran, over to you. Thank you again, Dr. Gopalan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for answering all the questions. Now I request Dr. Selina Joy.
Thank you.
Now I request Dr. Selina Joy to introduce the next speaker, Dr. Phukan. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning once again, Dr. Pranjal Kumar Phukan. It's a privilege to introduce him to all of you. He's an internationally acclaimed industry professional, having more than 25 years of experience with industries and academia in domains related to supply chain, operations management, project management, economics, business analytics, a wide range, including entrepreneurship and learning and development. He has a degree on logistics and supply chain management from the Swiss School of Business and Management. He has supported more than 650 micro and small enterprises and more than 60 startups across India, encompassing sectors like agri-tech, fintech, construction, FMCG, healthcare, organic farming, and animal husbandry. Other prominent topics covered for online and offline training workshops conducted for professionals and startups are big data analytics, image processing, cloud computing, and the likes. He has conducted entrepreneur awareness camps for many organizations. Some of them are IIT Guwahati, Downtown Venture Lab, Siemens Incubation Lab, in the Institute for Industrial Development, which is run by the MSME, Government of India owned, among others. He's a strong climate change advocate. He has authored the book titled Limits to Infinity. And we're so happy, sir, for you to join us today. Thank you so much. And he'll be talking about using technology to mitigate climate change. Over to you, Dr. Phukan.
Yeah. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you.
Welcome, welcome.
And thank you to ISAP for giving me this opportunity. I can share my presentation, I think.
Yes, you can.
Okay. Yes. So let me share my presentation. So as we will be speaking for students, so I thought, though they are management students, but we cannot say that we can solve the problem without using digital or without using the advanced technologies. So I thought I should be showcasing some of the cutting edge technologies which world is using now, globe is using now, and many countries are also using, so that we can mitigate the problems which we are seeing in regards to climate change. I am just now, this is the first phase. So first of all, we know regards to the introduction, let me introduce in this regard of climate change, that in order to reverse the climate change, even partially too, we need to bring atmospheric carbon dioxide levels down to safer threshold of 350 parts per million. We know that economics Nobel laureate William Nordhaus argues that carbon pricing is essential to tackling the climate change in his famous book, The Climate Casino, which was published by Yale University Press 2015. So today we know that carbon pricing is applied to about 22% of the global carbon emission. Similarly, economist Mark Jacquard has pointed out that while carbon taxes are economically most efficient, they are often face outsizing the political oppositions. So climate policy pioneers in Canada, California, and elsewhere have therefore resorted to flexible, albeit more complicated regulations that provides a variety of options for industries to meet decarbonization objectives. Similarly, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change recommendations for capping the warming at 1.5 degree requires cutting net global emissions almost in half by 2030 and to zero by 2050, but nations are, not making necessary emissions cuts. So by net emissions, we should understand that actual CO2 emissions minus the CO2 that we pull out of the air and sequesters. The IPCC estimates that achieving 1.5 degree peak temperature goal over time, drawing CO2 concentrations down to 350 ppm actually requires negative emissions of more than 10 gigaton of CO2 per year within several decades. So one of the interesting possibility here can be the use of hydrogen. Like we know that there are a lot of things are happening on hydrogen fuel cells and fuel cells for aviations. So Airbus is currently working on designing a hydrogen powered plane that it says will be in commercial service by 2035. So clean hydrogen production is presently a hot research topic in India also. I'm also part of some of the activities which are going on in Northeast regarding fuel cells, and the 200-year-old technique of water electrolysis, in which H2O is split into oxygen and hydrogen gas is getting a new look. So if low carbon electricity is used to power electrolysis, the clean hydrogen produced could be used to manufacture chemicals, materials, and synthetic fuels. So this is one just introduction of how these hydrogen fuel cells are basically working in place. So you must be knowing that hydrogen is playing a very critical role in a carbon-free energy systems, as renewables and nuclears, which are providing a great share of electricity. It can be used as a feedstock to make the synthetic fuels that can replace the fossil fuels like diesel, petrol, and all. So hydrogen can also be used directly as a fuel or feedstock to decarbonize industrial processes, which requires some new distributions and some new industrial infrastructure. There are some interesting facts on this auspicious day of Environment Day, which students should know. The first interesting fact is that the largest impact of climate change, that it could wipe off 18% of GDP of the world economy by 2050 if global temperatures rises by 3.2 degrees centigrade, which is being warned by Swiss Ray Institute. Second interesting fact is forecasts which are based on temperature increases staying on the current trajectory, and the Paris Agreement and net zero emission targets are not being met yet. Figures could also rise to 18% of the GDP by mid-century if temperature increases by 3.2 degrees centigrade in the most severe scenario. Climate change is a systematic risk that must be addressed now. The global economy will be losing 10% of total economic value by 2050 due to climate change, according to new research. Then we need to remove at least 200 gigatons of CO2 from the atmosphere. Then only we can reach net zero carbon emission. Humans are using about 1 zettajoule or energy per year, zettajoule of energy per year. To supply 1 zettajoule of energy per year with photovoltaic solar panels, we need to cover 1.6% of the land surface. To supply 1 zettajoule of energy per year with nuclear power, we have to build 3 1 gigawatt plants per day for 30 years. A 50-pound bag of concrete mix will cost about 42 cents more if the emissions from the cement manufacturing plants are captured and stored. Removing 2,000 gigaton of CO2 would account for roughly 2.8% of global GDP for 80 years. Now coming down to carbon management process, this also need to be understood that it is basically broken in 3 common categories, 3 main categories. First one is like how to go for measuring and reporting carbon footprints. So the first step is to measure the carbon emissions. Carbon reporting process always involves collection of CO2 data, which is organizing by emission type, geographical segments. Data is then measured again internationally recognized carbon accounting standards like GHG protocol or ISO 14064. Second process is abatement planning and management. So this is also part of the management courses, because after all, finally, you will be joining some industries. So your industries management will also be under this protocol of carbon emissions, cutting carbon emissions, supporting climate change as per the government policies and rules at the time. Second is abatement planning and management, which involves identifying key sources of emissions and implementing those measures to reduce them. So by categorizing emissions in one step, businesses can then pinpoint and measure which processes emit the highest volume of carbon dioxide and optimize their carbon abatement plan. So this is the carbon management process. So if you have the focus of net zero target, the global emissions covering 73%, then net emission target announcements, which is agreed in law as part of the initiative, that countries with no net zero target are basically 27%, United States is having 12%, China is 25%, European Union, even so 27 countries are 7%, and other countries with similar net zero announcement are only 29%. Third one is basically carbon offsetting. So in this, it is considered the option for last resort, when other two resorts are basically applied but not giving that results. So all the abatement and decarbonization investment had been exhausted. So it is a way of taking responsibility for unavoidable carbon emission by paying for others or to reduce or absorb CO2. So multiple types of projects are being used for carbon offsetting, which are ranging from environmental projects such as reforestation to carbon capture techniques or renewable energy production, like one of them is solar panels or solar energy, and carbon credits are measurable, verifiable emission reductions, and have been used as a means by governments and companies to offset their carbon emissions. Now coming to the subject today, how technology can fight climate change. First one is using AIoT, which is integration into measurement and reporting. IoT means industry or Internet of Things. So with a myriad of database and systems which are being involved with different carbon producing assets, you know that labor required to simplify the categories and to organize the data for multiple business units and asset is immense, because this is called big data. So AIoT integration enables seamless sourcing of the real-time data or activity-level data and assets into inventory data from the variety of systems. Through this, it provides the organization with the capability to efficiently structure, collect, transform these data into reports for accurate emissions monitoring, measurements, reducing overall efforts through the data collections, and enhancing the quality data and report resolutions. Second one is basically through this abatement technology, predictive analytics to simulate emissions. I'm basically speaking on data analytics. So abatement planning is a challenge which is primarily due to lack of accurate measures for determining the emissions which are derived from the certain processes. So AIoT technology tackles this challenge by creating insights from real data to better predictive process emissions. So by analyzing and learning from data through data from multiple processes, AIoT can refine the performance evaluation of abatement measures and also optimizes the emission predictions. So beyond optimizing abatement strategies, this particular technology can lower the overall marginal abatement costs. A third is carbon offsetting and offset integrations. So this is being done because we know that for last resort, the carbon offset market is playing a very essential role toward achieving global net zero emissions for countries and organizations with an estimated addressable market size of $200 billion by 2050. But we know that, however, the verification of carbon offsetting is difficult in trading, which is plaguing that industry. So here the technology can support the validation of RECs in near real time and offers a marketplace for affordable and fast carbon offsetting. So offset integration will provide a global pool of offsets to organizations, thereby improving the ease of trade and emissions planning like carbon, as you said, the carbon credit, reducing organization hassles and optimizing the timing of REC purchase and retirements. So we can have the tech innovations in terms of power generations, like Canadian company called General Fusion is aiming to be the first in the world to create a commercially viable nuclear fusion energy power plants. So this is also a part of the tech innovations. Second innovation is in transport, because we know that transport represents 23% of the global energy created CO2 emissions, but the demand for transport is also going to increase and is increasing. So researchers at University of Surrey, they have said that they have made a scientific breakthrough in this regard. They say that they have discovered a new material which offers alternate to battery power and proven to be between 1,000 to 10,000 times more powerful than the existing battery alternatives. Basically, it is a supercapacitor. So new technology is believed to have the potential for electric cars to travel to several similar distances as petrols without need to stop for lengthy recharging breaks of between 6 to 8 hours, and instead recharge fully in time it takes to fill a regular car with petrol. This is being said by the university. A third area is manufacturing, where tech innovations is helpful for supporting this climate change activities, because we know that about 30% of emissions are coming from the various industries. The carbon engineering is a Canadian startup which is working on the exactly that, taking carbon directly from the atmosphere and using it to produce fuel. So this is also a very innovative things happening. Then in case of buildings, the greenhouse emission of buildings is also very much significant. So combined emission of these sources contributes around 20% of the global emissions. There's the reason a company called Sidewalk Labs, which is part of Alphabet Inc., the parent of Google, is doing harnessing digital technologies to solve today's pressing urban problems. Then one more thing I like to add is increased blue carbon. So coastal regions such as mangroves, salt marshes, and green grasses suck in and store carbon in soil at a greater rate than plants on land known as blue carbon. So efforts are underway to turn this ecosystem into carbon sinks that can remove more emissions from the atmosphere. For example, Apple is currently supporting a mangrove expansion project in Colombia under this blue carbon project. Then how to boost these ocean plants' productivity? Because oceans are already believed to be one of our planet's biggest carbon sinks, which are full of plants that uses carbon dioxide to synthesis. Now projects are attempting to make them more efficient. So one approach is involving injecting iron nutrients into the iron to prompt a bloom in microscopic plants called phytoplankton, which floats on the upper part of the ocean, which absorbs CO2 absorbed from the atmosphere. Then coming to enhanced rock weathering, because experts are trying to speed up the process by pulverizing rocks and spreading the resulting powders over a large area, which absorbs more CO2 from rain and air. So IPCC, that is Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, estimates that at a scale, this could capture 2 to 4 billion metric tons at a cost of between $50 and $200, which equivalent to 39 pounds to 160 pounds per metric ton. How to then second other options is to through tech innovation is increasing soil carbon with biochar. So this is a type of charcoal which is made by burning biomass, such as wood or farm waste in absence of oxygens. Biochar can increase the amount of carbon locked in the soil for hundreds of thousands of years. So it also helps soil to retain water and reduce methane and nitrogen emission, which is also part of the Safe Soil campaign going on. So the IPCC is estimating that this could capture about 0.5 and 2 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide annually. However, the cost of sourcing sustainable biochar poses a challenge at present, but it will be taken care as we advance in our technical approach. That direct air capture, this is called DAC, so which proposes that carbon capture and storage technology that many power stations are now trailing could be carried out almost anywhere. So Swiss startup company called Climeworks is a company which is attempting to make direct air capture viable by passing air through a surface that reacts with CO2 to form a compound, but releasing the remaining air. So main challenge of DAC is the cost that is in between 200 to 600 US dollar or equivalent to 156 pounds to 468 pounds per metric tons, and large amounts of energy is required. So it's in the very nascent stage. So in case of climate change innovations, as we said, it can move the world towards a net zero while creating enormous business and economic value, because the solution providers, which is driven by the revenues, and we know that large emitters are basically driven by the cost. So obviously we need to have a sector focus, climate risk innovations, where existing value chains and remodels needs to be looked into. And we need to have very clear focus how to create a new value chains and models so that climate solution innovation can take place, and supporting the solution providers and large emitters both economically. And ecosystem accelerates the speed and scale of change. So you can see here ecosystems which are overcoming barriers via collaborations and risk sharing mechanisms. So we need the ability to overcome the technical, economic, and other structural barriers that comes with the long-term technology and developments. Ecosystem actions can generate a demand signal through joint pledges, kickstarting a competitive playing field, and conditions and the coalitions can also coordinate support for more ambitious climate policies. So here you can see all are the stakeholders. Most important are the government and public institutions. So thank you very much for your patience listening. Now, if you have any questions, then we can discuss. It's a very big subject, which cannot be completed in like 1 hour or something like, because I'm also part of many climate advocacy activities presently going on with me. I'm also training on few of the climate advocacy subjects. And my company, Cosmos Minds, is basically into partnering for the academic institutions and industries, bridging the gap so that we can support the students and faculties as per new education policy 2020. And also the climate activities is required in both the places, not only for the industries, but for the academic institutions also. So thank you once again. If you have any questions, then I may answer.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing some really interesting facts with us. Sir, I would like to ask one question, like what triggered your interest to become a climate change advocate?
Very honestly speaking, as a business, if I am a business student, then I must say that it is enough very huge scope in future to scale up your career. Very honestly speaking, because this is the only subject we should be discussing in next coming means in ongoing all the years, ongoing all. It's one of the hottest topic now. Many things will cropping up like save our soil or something like, but finally advocacy is climate change. So this is a good topic which is applicable for engineers, scientists, mathematicians, management students, law students, humanities also, arts also, anything. Very interesting and long-term subject. So I thought that it is a very right time to jump into, otherwise, so that we can be the first one to act on it.
Mover. Yeah, first mover advantage.
First movers, yes,
and your curious mindset to learn more.
Yes.
We have one question from our Sir Optimist Zareen Babu. It's on the chat box also. How do you burn without oxygen? The usual burning by farmers add to pollution. So how can a lay person do this burning process without harming the environment? You can see the chat box also. Just put this question.
This is basically aerobic and anaerobic. But this is called in science called aerobic, using oxygen, anaerobic without oxygen. So as a human body, we are also burning oxygen using without, means we are also burning our energy without using oxygen in our body also. So where if we burn our energy or our food without oxygen in our body, it produces lactic acid, isn't it? In our body, human body, I'm saying. So it is possible. Only thing is that it cannot be it can be have to be replaced by some other or gas like in place of oxygen, because it is happening in the deep oceans where you don't find any oxygen. So they are using sulfurs. Okay. So one more thing is that burning is causing emissions, which is creating problems with climate change. So there are many other way out. Like instead of burning, why don't we decompose? Why don't we decompose? Because it will be again creating fuel for us, which is called biogas. So this is also one thing which is happening presently. Apart from ethanol, biogas is also going on, where government has lot of subsidies. Instead of burning the husk, or instead of burning the waste vegetations, we should go for decomposition so that we can produce biogas. And these are well incentivized by the government with lots of subsidies. So we have the farmers now have an option of ethanol blending. It's not blending, ethanol production. They have the option of biogas. So because we are agri-based country, so there are a lot of options for our people. So instead of burning, using oxygen or not oxygen, that is not important. But instead of burning, we should go for decomposition. That is anaerobic.
Selina madam.
So 1 minute. So Goyal sir has a question. After that, we'll go with.
Yeah.
Hello. A very nice talk. You covered a lot of things. Just wanted to ask you something about the hydrogen thing.
Very interesting.
We had been hearing about hydrogen-based cars, etc., for last 50 years, but it has not come in the market. And so I want to know what is the status. And in particularly, I want to know how do you store hydrogen? What is the status of that?
See, hydrogen fuel is very, very interesting subject now. Okay.
It has been interesting for last 50 years. For last 50 years, I have been hearing it is a very interesting subject. It is not now. It is for last 50 years.
The last 50 years, it was under research, but now we are already producing vehicles running on hydrogen fuels in Pune, Bangalore, by Indian Oil Corporations, by Tata Motors. Okay. So here, there is similar to the battery. Okay, similar to the battery, we have batteries. We have a stack of batteries. Okay. And stack of batteries, what is happening? The intake is hydrogen, and the outflow is water. So that is the beauty. Basically, in case that, and first let me tell you, in hydrogen fuel and fuel cells, there are two type of energy producing cells. One is hydrogen fuel cells, another is called fuel cells. Okay. So in case of fuel cells, your input is hydrogen and your output is water, and in between you have to passing through oxygen. Okay, this is fuel cell. However, in case of hydrogen fuel cells, you have to split the water. You have to split the existing water into ions and anions, like hydrogen ions and oxygen as a negative and positive ions and anions. And after splitting only you can get the electricity. But problem here is you need lots of water, huge quantity of water for splitting purpose. But however, in case of fuel cells, you don't need any water basically. You need only the hydrogen from the atmosphere, or you can use the compressed hydrogen cylinders as a input, which is mostly used in the vehicle. So in such vehicles, you need to put one hydrogen cylinder. You need to have the stack of your batteries and one oxygen cylinder, nothing else. So your input is hydrogen, your in-between input is oxygen, and output will be water. So you are storing this hydrogen fuel or fuel cell generated energy in the battery only. But these batteries are different than existing batteries, because these batteries have a permeable the partition in between, and we have chemicals, lots of various type of chemicals are there. Some are solid type, some are liquid type. So you have to just fill those stacks with those chemicals, and you have to put just a permeable membrane in between the chemicals. So where to just separate the positive and negative
Sure,
ions.
sure. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah,
No, my
yeah.
main question was about the hydrogen storage. So you said compressed gas
Compressed
cylinders,
cylinders you have to
but they
use.
will be very heavy. They will be very
No,
heavy.
no,
So
no, no, no.
you have to carry it in the car. They will be very heavy.
No, that what I'm saying is actually for the trucks. Now there are actually hydrogen fuel run trucks also there. Okay, so one option is to keep these cylinders for the low power activities. For the high power activities, we need to have some sequesters, like we are using in the case of during COVID, there are oxygen plants. Okay, that's the simple oxygen plants. What they do, they have the hydrogen means capturing oxygen capturing units, or they capture the oxygen from the atmosphere, they process it, they clean it, and then fill it. So here also the systems are there where they capture the atmospheric gas and the atmospheric air from the gas from the atmosphere, and they segregate the hydrogen, and they leave the other gases to the atmosphere back again.
Okay,
So
sir. Thank you.
this is for the huge power related equipments. Other than
Sir.
simplest form is you
Okay.
need to
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Madam, I have one question.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, we
Madam?
have one last question before
Yeah,
we
yeah.
wind up. Yes, sir. We'll take your one last question before we wind up the webinar. Yes.
Okay.
Please go
Sir,
ahead.
Yeah. Sir, I just want to ask you, when the renewable energy, particularly this solar energy being cheaper, so what is the roadblock that it has not become very popular in India? And it should, in case the particular aspect is considered as the cheapest source, this should be the leading, isn't it, source of energy in India? But it is not so. What are the roadblocks for that? Number one. Number two is that what are the risk factors attached to this?
First of all, the roadblock you see nowadays, these solar panels are solar powered requirements are being made by the government bodies only, or you can say large corporations, because first of all, to generate so much, okay, you need a very huge amount of land. That is the first problem. And second one, for a rooftop type solar panel, as I said, it is also not compatible for putting this type of solar panels everywhere. Okay. Because the conditions first is that how much of sunlight you have and what is the intensity of sunlight you have. If you are from the places like northeast or eastern region where it has the rainfall is very high, so in those places to keep a solar panel is not proving that much as compared to if you are putting the solar panel in Gujarat or Maharashtra or very dry places like Rajasthan. And one more thing I must tell, that one of the biggest roadblock is the batteries, because the batteries where the energy is stored is similar batteries we are using in the inverters. Okay. So the batteries also have some life. Okay, that unit may be of the life of 45 years, 35 years, but batteries doesn't have the life of 45. That just has a life of, I think, 1 to 2 years. And also biggest problem in public places is that there is a cases of pilfering of batteries, but batteries are stolen. Okay. So these are some of the things. And one more important thing, that many companies have cropped up in India regarding to solar panels. But as my earlier speaker has truly said, that we don't know which are the best quality, which are the inferior qualities. Okay, so might be people might have procured some inferior quality rooftop solar panels, and they are fighting against it due to bad quality. So these are some of the things are not supporting. And also we have good solar panel subsidy system by the government, but still it's not picking up. So reason behind is this, that people are not aware of like how much it would be beneficial for them, except for the industries and other things. Individual cases, I have not seen much penetration of solar things in our country.
Risk
Okay,
factor,
sir.
sir. Risk factor. Second
Thank you.
question.
Risk
Yeah.
factor, health and safety factor, I don't say anything. But commercial, economical risk factors are a lot of theirs, because you might not be using those accepted accepted ratings or something which is given by the government for subsidies. So you won't get subsidies there. You might be getting some. You don't know where to get the genuine components, genuine parts, and it is something like equipment, no? And they are not we are not having that much of retailers, dealers who are working across the country for supporting our systems. So that's the risk factor. Otherwise, in case of health, there is nothing, because there's nothing involved which is damaging to the health and environment.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, Simran.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. With this, we came to the close of observance of World Environment Day. I'm happy to propose the vote of thanks today. At the outside, I would like to thank our guest speakers, Mr. Pashupathy Gopalan and Dr. Pranjal Kumar Phukan, for enlightening us with their wonderful presentation. The session were really informative, will definitely help us to deeply think about the theme Only One Earth and do our bit to save the environment. A big thank you to our management for providing us with a platform to conduct such wonderful activities. I extend my sincere gratitude to Dr. R. Chandran, Director of PIMSA, Ms. Namrata Saxena, President of SIBC, and Dr. Anjali Bhute, Chairperson of the PIMSA Social Service Committee. Thank you to all the Seroptimus members who have joined us today and the faculty members of PIMSA for their support and guidance. I would like to thank Professor Dhaval Bhatt for their technical support extended for this webinar. Last but not the least, thank you to all the students for your attention throughout the session. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simran.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice day. Thank you, Namrata, Anjali, Zareen, Padmini, Annapurna, all the Seroptimus, Smita ma'am, who have all joined us today, Goel sir. Thank you so much. I hope the session was informative and you gained a lot from it. Thank you and have a wonderful Sunday. Bye-bye. Thank you, Simran.
Thank you, ma'am.